Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Vaughn with Family Fiction's Christian Fiction Bookshelf podcast. On today's podcast, we have Sara Brunsvold, who's here to talk to us, sorry about that, about her brand new book called The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kip. Hi, Sara. How are you?
I am great, Jamie. I am so pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So here at Christian Fiction Bookshelf podcast, we want to hear the story behind the story. So I want to know why you wrote the book and what the book's about.
Yeah, so I'll start with what the book is about. So it centers on an unexpected friendship that forms between an elderly hospice patient named Clara Kit and a young cub reporter named Aidan Kelly, who is sent to interview her. Mm-hmm. And Aidan initially thinks that this is just a throwaway assignment, very beneath her. But little does she know that Mrs. Kip has an extraordinary life story that she's going to want to pay attention to, along with a few surprises up her sleeve. So it's very much an intergenerational story. It is set in my hometown of Kansas City. And one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book is because I personally, as a reader, love intergenerational stories. Mm-hmm. I love stories like The Printed Letter Bookshop by Catherine Ray is one of my favorites. Fried Green Tomatoes, of course, is a famous one that everyone knows. I love stories that are about these relationships, especially between women, older women and younger women. The older I get, the more seriously I want to take the command in Titus 2 about the older women investing in the younger women. And I know that I have had more than one Mrs. Kip in my life, and I feel like I need to also not only find more Mrs. Kips, but also be a Mrs. Kip to other people. So that's kind of where the story came from, is just this genuine love and desire to celebrate intergenerational relationships.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit more about Clara Kit?
About Clara Kit, yes. So Clara Kit is 79 years old, and she is a Spitfire. Despite being in her final days, she absolutely just loves life and wants to make the most of the time that she has left. And so some tidbits about her: she loves wearing tracksuits. That's her preferred outfit, which I can relate to. I love wearing sweats. And she loves chocolate chip cookies and just loves to have fun wherever she goes. And I did mention that, she's had a long life of a lot of hard things, a lot of hard lessons along the way. She's a woman who came to faith later in life, around in her 30s. She is a widow, and so that kind of gives you an indication of sort of the hard road that she has walked. But she is chock full of wisdom and wants to invest that. That is what she wants to be, a legacy of sorts that she leaves behind. And Aidan is one of those people who is blessed to receive some of that wisdom.
Do you have a favorite character in the book?
Oh, man. Mrs. Kip, yeah, Clara Kip, I often say is who I want to be when I grow up. Mm-hmm. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I enjoyed writing a character that I wanted to kind of see myself as in the future. Now, I think I have a very different personality than she does, but yeah, she just, when I was introduced to her, I just instantly fell in love with her. So I would say that she is my favorite, and I don't think that any of the other characters in the book would take offense to that. I think they would agree.
So you have said that this book could be a challenge for some people to read. What do you mean by that?
Well, it could be a challenge in several different ways. So it does deal a lot about the end of life, which can be a hard topic, regardless of whether you have experienced that with a loved one or not. They can be hard, especially if you have experienced it. I have heard from early readers who have walked a loved one through the end of life that it was hard to read some of these scenes. But so it can be challenging in that way. But I also hope one of the things that comes across as a challenge in a good way is that readers will be challenged to be a Mrs. Kip to someone and see the value in that Titus II womanhood and want to take steps to do that, and possibly thank those who have been mentors to them in any sort of way, formal or informal.
Yeah. Now, you said you set this in Kansas City, Missouri. Why?
Well, Kansas City is where I'm from, and I love the Midwest. I'm a Midwesterner through and through, and you don't see a lot of stories set in Kansas City, which I think is a travesty because there is so much that this city offers. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to, first of all, just bring some love to my hometown, but also I just saw these characters as being from the Midwest. And so, one thing led to another, and you write about what you know, and Kansas City is definitely a town that I know well. And so I was able to draw from experience in order to create this setting.
Nice. So what kind of research did you do for the book?
So I did a lot of, So I did a lot of research on the end of life stage. So it is something that I do have personal experience with. Both of my in-laws passed away in hospice care. And so I had that personal experience to initially draw from, but I definitely wanted to go deeper into what that experience is like, not just for the patient, but also for the loved one, for those who are giving them care. And so I did a lot of research, reading, interviewing. My father-in-law was actually in hospice while I was writing this book, and it was his hospice nurse who served as a subject matter expert for me. In fact, he was the one who diagnosed Mrs. Kip. I just had a general idea of what was causing her pain and what her ailment would be. And when I described it to him, he identified. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like this. So, and then from there, we were able to determine, what would bedside care then look like in that situation. So I did a lot of research for that side of things. Aiden is a journalist who works at the Kansas City Star, and I have several friends who used to work at the Star, and so they were great resources to kind of help me understand how does the culture of a newsroom operate, and then specifically what did the Kansas City Star newsroom look like back in 2016, which is when this book is set. There's also, not to give too much away about the story, but there is also a piece of real Kansas City history that plays an important part of this story. And it has to do with refugees from Laos coming to settle into Kansas City following the Vietnam War. And so that was also a situation where I did a lot of reading, archive research from the Kansas City Star, and also some interviewing of people who were part of that experience. And so it was very eye-opening, that history that took place, literally less than a mile from my home. There were refugees who lived in this area, and even in the city today, you can still see a bit of their fingerprints on the landscape of Kansas City. For instance, there's a restaurant not too far from my house that serves traditional Laotian meals, dishes, and so I was able to partake, all in the name of research. I partook in some of that food.
What do you want the reader to take away from the book?
The biggest thing that I would like readers to take away from the book is that regardless of what circumstance you're in, regardless of what you have faced, there is a call to be part of a greater community, and there's hope when we embrace that call. There is so much hope in that, and I think in today's world especially, that is a needed message.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So what's next for you?
What is next for me? I am currently working on my second novel. It is about a young woman going through a family crisis, and as a way to process through everything that's going on, she cooks her way through her great-grandmother's authentic German recipes.
Wow.
So, and that's due out early 2024 from Revell.
All right. So I cannot wait to read this book. And everyone, please go and buy Sara Brunsvold's Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kip. And make sure, if you can, buy local. Buy from your local Christian bookstore if you can. But wherever you buy books, we hope that you pick it up. Sara, best of luck. And today's Christian Fiction Bookshelf podcast was brought to you by Revell, a division of Baker. If you like what you saw today, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss another chapter.